Simon Wiesenthal. That's the name of the real-life Magneto if you replaced Magneto's powers with the Punisher's hard-on for justice. But how do you forge a mixture of Magneto and the Punisher in the real world? The Nazis had an idea or a million. Simon Wiesenthal was a Jewish man, and when he was 33, he, along with his wife and 89 other members of his family, were imprisoned or killed by the Nazis in concentration camps, along with millions of other people that slaved away on one soup a day, fuel for the Nazis' world war, building weapons and ammunition, because these 15 million prisoners were the Nazis' most expendable resource. Life was cheap, and those that didn't die of starvation died from being overworked or from working in the cold of the Eastern European winter in nothing but a shirt and pants, or from being tortured, or from injuries sustained while working after being tortured, or from being executed because these injuries slowed them down while working. The concentration camps were hell on earth. And yet, somehow, Simon Wiesenthal survived 12 of them. He survived 12 camps. And what do you get when you forge a man in the fires of hell? You get a demon of justice. But we're not there yet. The birth of Simon Wiesenthal, the Magneto Punisher, would come later. Before he became vengeance personified, Simon Wiesenthal was just a kid from Bocsach, a tiny town in what was then the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was born there on December 31st, 1908, into a Jewish family living in the melting pot of cultures and languages that this town was. Polish people, Germans, Hungarians, Austrians, Ukrainians, Jews, all living side by side like one big family. And I don't mean a happy family, I mean the abusive kind where the Jewish family members are not invited to the cookout. Yeah, long before the Holocaust, Jewish people had to learn to keep their head down. But that didn't stop Simon's father, Asher Wiesenthal, from becoming the definition of manly. Dude was a war veteran and a lumberjack. Yo, that's like asking ChatGPT for the most stereotypical manly man ever for a thirst calendar for the ladies. Papa Wiesenthal ended his life as manly as he lived it, fighting in World War I. Simon was just 7 years old at the time that his dad died, and now Mama Wiesenthal, Rosa, she was a single mom to Simon and his younger brother Hillel. But she made it work, and young Simon's dream was to be an architect, and they got him to study to fulfill his dream at the Technical University of Prague, graduating with a degree in engineering. But the only architecture he would go on to do is to deconstruct Nazis. It's terrible, because here I am doing this video of him as this badass, like, ooh, we're building up to all the badass what he's gonna do. And he was a badass, but it's not like it's cool, you know. History was not kind to this man. It was cruel. And then it got worse, because that's how hero origin stories tend to go. But let's cling on to the last ray of sunshine in Simon Wiesenthal's life. After graduating from university in 1932, Simon met his future wife, Sila, in 1934. The two got married in 1936, and Simon's life was complete. He was working his dream job, living with his dream woman, ready to build a dream life. But then the nightmare started. Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, and in 1941 the Nazis had taken over Simon's hometown of Bocsach, and Simon and his wife Sila were first herded into ghettos, then forced into concentration camps, and eventually subjected to the endless brutality of the Nazi regime. They were nothing but fuel to the Nazi war machine too. of endless waves of slaves giving their lives to build weapons, ammunition, and infrastructure under inhuman conditions, because with more than 15 million people's lives supplying these concentration camps, as I said in the beginning, life was cheap. Of course, the Nazis didn't care about keeping families together, although it would have definitely been aligned with their cruelty to make their prisoners watch their loved ones die. But they didn't. So Simon and his wife Sila got separated. And somehow, in this nightmarish darkness, Sila found a ray of light. As Simon was taken from camp to camp, Sila managed to get smuggled out with false papers. The rest of Simon's family was not so lucky though. His mother, Rosa, was murdered in the gas chambers of the Belzec extermination camp in 1942. His younger brother, Hillel, was also killed by the Nazis in Bochach, and in total 89 of his extended family members were killed by the Nazis. All the while, Simon survived hell until he managed to escape it in October 1943. And the only way a Jewish life mattered to the Nazis was when there was a chance that it would, survive. They placed a bounty of 5,000 Reichsmark, or 50,000 of today's US dollars, on this half-dead man, just because they hadn't fully worked Simon to death yet. And so 8 months later, in June 1944, Simon was recaptured, punished for his escape attempt with some creative torture, and then put back to work. But then something happened. Team America was here. Back when they were great and fought for good. They were here to liberate Germany from the Nazis, and on May 5th, 1945, Simon Wiesenthal was amongst those liberated. Germany had lost the war and the concentration camps fell. Simon and the others were free from their suffering, free to live with trauma for the rest of their lives. And while others who survived tried to run from these memories, Simon Wiesenthal, who had been starved down to about 40 kilos, he didn't. He never got to physically bury his family, so he had buried them in his mind, where he visited their graves every single day, forcing himself to face the pain the Nazis had caused, for he knew that only in pain would he find justice. Yep, now it starts. While his body was still broken, Simon's mind was already doing the math. Names, ranks, locations, patterns. He wrote down everything he remembered of his torturers, any information they might have revealed about their lives, anything to find out where they are now. The guards, the commanders, the doctors wielding scalpels with smiles. Anybody that escaped post-war justice would not escape Simon Wiesenthal.
I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
And let's just pause here for a moment to appreciate what Simon actually did here. There was no internet in 1945, no Google, no international criminal database. Wiesenthal was running on ink and vengeance only. The man rented himself an office in Linz, Austria, sat down at a desk and started gathering evidence. He talked to survivors, he sketched maps, he built file cabinets full of information, made the right people talk by whatever means necessary, and sooner or later he started making noise and found out where these Nazis were hiding. Needless to say, Simon made himself very annoying to very powerful people who were trying to protect some very bad man. But it didn't matter. No one was safe from Simon Wiesenthal that night. But when I say Nazi hunter, I don't mean that he painted a skull on his Kevlar and went to work. I mean that he was more like the most dangerous librarian you've ever seen. Bro, this man sent some strongly worded letters to authorities and politicians, you know what I mean? I'm sorry, but in the real world, sometimes knowledge is a deadlier weapon than a gun. Professor X would approve of this real-life Magneto. How ironic. With overwhelming evidence and by going public with it, Simon forced authorities to get off of their butts and bring these former Nazis enjoying their retirement to justice. One of them was Adolf Eichmann. If you don't know, Adolf Eichmann was the architect of the final solution, and if you don't know, The final solution was the plan to entirely exterminate the Jewish people from all of Europe. So, if you need a ballpark number, Eichmann is probably responsible for the death of 6 million people. Adolf Eichmann was as evil as they come, and he was actually not pardoned or given a new identity. He was legit one of the most wanted men in the world, but he hid well enough for long enough, and eventually the heat of the Nazi atrocities died down, and by 1960 Eichmann was maybe not forgiven, but mostly forgotten. No one really cared all that much anymore, except for Simon Wiesenthal. Simon provided Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, with key intelligence they needed to find and capture Eichmann in Argentina in 1960. That case made Simon famous, and from then on, every time the world wanted to move on and forget atrocities that were now over a decade old, Simon showed up like, hey, remember that guy who burned children alive in Poland? Yeah, guess who's living happily ever after in Brazil and owns a shoe store? Let's go get him. Shama! Over the next 50 years, Simon Wiesenthal identified, located, and ultimately brought to justice a total of 1,100 Nazis. Think about that. Think about the number. 1,100 Nazis. 1,100 evil men and women that starved, beat, abused, burned, and mutilated and otherwise tortured innocent men, women, and children. 1,100 scumbags that would have lived happily ever after without punishment for their actions, all of them free to spread their ideology and evil seed if it wasn't for the Nazis. Simon genuinely had a Punisher body count, except he did it with subpoenas and court dates instead of bullets. But it does not lessen his impact. Here's two more people that would have not been brought to justice without him: Franz Stangl and Hermine Braunsteiner. Franz Stangl was the commander of the extermination camp in Treblinka, where 870,000 people were murdered, and Hermine Braunsteiner, her nickname was the Stomping Mare of Majdanek, and she earned that nickname because she stomped children to death with her boots. Now, 25 years later, Hermine was living a quiet life in Queens, New York, free, forgotten, until Wiesenthal came knocking.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Now, let's be clear, not everybody loved Simon's work. His mission to hunt these monsters down made life very difficult for a lot of powerful people. He publicly exposed and shamed entire governments for taking hush money and hiding war criminals, so Simon made a lot of powerful enemies. The Austrian government, the German government, and even parts of the Israeli establishment. Many of them found Wiesenthal annoying at best, or wanted to see him dead at worst. And Simon was dodging death threats like... all because he was a man who shamed the world into facing its past. And the world doesn't like to be shamed. Some accused him of exaggerating his own past suffering and the atrocities committed against him. Some said he exaggerated his role in bringing people to justice. And some said he is just chasing publicity, or that his evidence is sloppy and his claims unverified. But you know how Wiesenthal was able to beat all these accusations?
What's this? Huh? What's this, motherfucker?
Man, he had receipts, file after file, testimony after testimony. If you ever wanted to convince someone that organization, filing, and paperwork is important, damn, bro, Simon Wiesenthal. Anytime the man found someone guilty of war crimes, he had the evidence to back it up, thanks to immaculate filing and organization. And most people would probably end it here. Take down the big boys, the super Nazis. That's good enough. Why continue pissing on all these Nazi trees when 3 governments already wouldn't mind you being 6 feet under? But not Simon, man, nah. This guy might have been less than 40 kilos when he got out of those camps, but at this point, and credible historians have taken great efforts to actually verify this, at this point, just Simon's balls alone weighed over 40 kilograms. I mean, those things were so massive, dude was dragging them along, and on some real Magneto thing. Wiesenthal didn't just stop at Nazi officers. He went after collaborators too. Oh, you helped Franz, Hans, Adolf, Fritz dodge sentencing for their war crimes?
Kill you!
Oh, you called the SS to tell them your neighbor's hiding a Jewish prisoner? Simon had no law for Nazi enablers, and he fought tooth and goddamn nail to remind the world that anti-Semitism was not defeated in 1945. In the 1970s, when neo-Nazis started crawling out of their holes and the Holocaust denial became a thing, Wiesenthal hit back. He went on talk shows, he wrote books, he helped build museums because he knew physical wars come and go and get buried along with the soldiers that fought them. The real victory lies in winning the memory wars, because the moment people forget, history becomes just another story. That would not happen while Simon Wiesenthal was still alive.
Not on my watch! Not on my watch!
One day, when asked why he didn't just move on eventually, Wiesenthal famously replied, "I am not a hater. I am a man of justice." I'm not kidding. That's an actual quote from 1992. Man really said, "I'm not a hater" back then, bro. This man was the definition of an absolute
Dog!
And let's be real here. It doesn't take much for there to be a version of this guy that goes full Punisher, full vigilante justice, payback with blood, all that. But Wiesenthal, he chose the law, not because he was soft. No, it was because he believed that the world had to prove it could hold monsters accountable. Otherwise, the whole post-war order was a lie. Otherwise, it would all happen again, and all those who fought the horrors of fascism in World War II died for nothing. Remember that. It's very relevant for the times we live in. Man, the dude kept on going into old age. At age 84, man was still holding speeches, reminding people that there is no statute of limitations for genocide, that silence is complicity, that the worst evil in the world does not come from monsters. It comes from normal people who think no one is watching. So he watched them all. he made sure they knew it too. Old man Wiesenthal was still on his Punisher. He never let go. He carried photos of murdered relatives. He memorized dates. He could recall the names of SS guards from obscure labor camps that historians forgot ever even existed. Simon Wiesenthal was not a man who moved on, and neither did his wife, Sila. Sila survived the war too. After using false papers to escape the camps, she lived in hiding for years, believing her husband to be dead, but she did not move on, did not forget. And the two actually reunited after Liberation Day in May 1945, rekindling their once dream love, and their daughter, Pauline, was born in 1946. Out of the ashes of a nightmare, they were able to build some version of the dream family that the Nazis tried to take from them.
Oh my god, are you crying?
No, it's just raining.
So what is the legacy of this man? Well, he got honors, sure, awards, medals, honorary degrees, blah, blah, blah. But he wasn't in it for that, for the glory. And despite everything he accomplished, at the end, Simon was still disappointed in how little justice actually got served. He believed the majority of Nazi criminals never paid for their crimes, and so he kept fighting them until he died on September 20th, 2005 in Vienna at the age of 96. The world gave him the usual honorary text: Holocaust survivor, Nazi hunter, tireless advocate. All true, but not enough. Because Simon Wiesenthal was more than a survivor, a Nazi hunter. Simon Wiesenthal was a consequence. He was what happens when you massacre millions and expect no one to remember, because he remembered. He made it his job, his mission, his revenge. Maybe not with fire and brimstone like Magneto and the Punisher, but unlike their fiction, Simon Wiesenthal was a very real man. And he let the world know that there is no peace without justice, that there is no justice without memory. And thanks to him, memory had a face, a name, a fury. Simon Wiesenthal. Straight
Dog.
And if you want me to do a video about another Nazi hunter, one that was more Punisher than Magneto and preferred guns and blood over pen and paper, but had a rocky relationship with Simon Wiesenthal, whom he considered soft, then let me know and I'll do a video on former Mossad leader Isser Harel. Until then, do the like, do the subscribe, do the notification, and do know that you can become a YouTube member, and there's a link below. It's all written there. You can support the channel, make sure this channel stays alive, and you get all the artwork. But again, click the link in the description. You see all about it. And I'll see you next Sunday.